In college football, Michigan is hiring Kyle Whittingham as its next head coach. That's the latest from our Matt Zenitz. Whittingham was the head coach of Utah for 22 seasons. He stepped down earlier this month as the school's all-time wins leader, 177 of them. He will replace Sherrone Moore, who was fired earlier this month as well, with cause after an internal investigation found that he engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. After being let go, Moore was later arrested and charged with felony home invasion, as well as 2 misdemeanors related to going to that staff member's apartment. The news now, though, of this day, December 26th, is that Michigan has found its man, maybe not a Michigan man, but maybe the best man for the job. Brandon Marcello, Chip Patterson with us here on HQ. All right, Brandon, we spoke earlier in the day and you said it is happening today. Why were you so sure, and what do you make of the hire?
Yeah, these two parties have been talking for several days now. They took some time during the Christmas holiday to kind of let things breathe a little bit and then started moving forward again. Earlier this morning, and I can tell you Kyle Whittingham has already been reaching out to former staffers, current staffers, and some potential staffers for his new stint there at Michigan, including offensive coordinator Jason Beck at Utah, who just came in. This is his first year and managed to take that offense into a top 10 offense, and they were number 2 in rushing. And the expectation is right now that if they're able to work some things out, Jason Beck will end up being the offensive coordinator for Kyle Whittingham there at Michigan. That's not done yet, but now that the paper has now been inked by Kyle Whittingham at Michigan, you'll start hearing a lot more about his staff as he builds this thing out. And once again, this is a situation that's been developing the last few days, but they wanted the holiday to come and go before they kind of put that ink to that paper.
And building on top of that, that's the key here, right? 66-year-old head coach who spent all of his career at Utah, who's now taken over at Michigan. Who are you going to have as your assistants? How are you going to be able to get out there and hit the recruiting trail and be able to have the kind of effectiveness that is required at a place like the University of Michigan? Now, look, are there resources? Yes, there are resources. Are you going to have the opportunities that you did not have when you were walking in with that Utah sweater than when you're walking in with the M and the jump man? 100%. But you know, how much of this is going to be a blend of coaches that Kyle Whittingham has worked with, coaches that might have a little bit more institutional knowledge within the Michigan community, because transfer portal opens on January 2nd, and there's going to be some holes to fill on this depth chart, and they're going to need this new staff to be in place. Is Biff Poggi going to be involved? Who else is going to still be around from last year's staff? I think that Kyle Whittingham is such an upgrade from Sherrone Moore. I think Kyle Whittingham is an upgrade from the position of maybe just having Biff Poggi be a caretaker. It is a good place for Michigan to land when you consider how many potential candidates had signed extensions or decided that they were not going to leave for this opportunity in Ann Arbor. So if you're a Michigan fan, I do think this is a win. But, buddy, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and the clock is ticking.
And, Chip, maybe it all starts with that transfer portal that opens up on January 2nd. How quickly does Whittingham get into this? Has work already, in your mind, been started behind the scenes?
Yes. I think that the relationship with Bryce Underwood's number 1, right? I mean, that's got to be picking up the phone right away. You call number 19. You make sure that you have the same vision. You're probably even starting to have some of those discussions about what the offense is going to look like, and that's going to drive some of your staff decisions, not just offensive coordinator, but position coaches, and just sort of the way that everything is going to come together. Bryce Underwood might be sending Kyle Whittingham into the transfer portal window saying, maybe I would like 1 or 2 more game-breaking wide receivers. Maybe that offensive line could use an upgrade, my opinion, but I think that this is very much, when it comes to the work behind the scenes, Chris, I think this has to start with making sure that the relationship between Kyle Whittingham and the potential generational talent that they have at the quarterback position with Bryce Underwood, you got to make sure that is good, because that's one of the most important relationships for this entire hire.
Yeah, I think in a lot of ways this hire makes a lot of sense. But if they were to bring Jason Beck in there as offensive coordinator, he is a run-first coach. You look at their offense this past year, ranking number 2 in rushing offense. He also likes to mix things up. They're not just going to line up in the I formation or run 2 or 3 personnel groupings and then run the ball at you. He mixes things up. He does a lot of misdirection there. A lot of different personnel groupings. 2 tight ends, 1 tight end, 3 tight ends, 2 running backs, 1 running back, empty backfield. This guy's going to find ways to take advantage of space out there in the running game, which is going to make things easier for a quarterback like Bryce Underwood, who I believe, though he is very talented, and obviously as a passer, you watch it, the whip fire reaction he has as a passer is fantastic. Still a lot of development that needs to be done there. I also think they need to take advantage of him more with some of those quarterback design runs, and this is something that Jason Beck, I'm sure, is just absolutely licking his chops at, the prospect of being able to coach a guy that wasn't just the #1 quarterback a year ago in the recruiting circles, but someone who could be potentially a generational type talent under the right tutelage. And I'll say this, he was not getting that under Sherrone Moore. He wasn't getting that under Chip Lindsey. Jason Beck is someone that is coming in and has been on the rise quickly from New Mexico, now to Utah, and now potentially Michigan, where I think Bryce Underwood obviously is going to test his options potentially maybe in the transfer portal. He's going to see what's out there. But if he were to stay at Michigan, this thing could be jet fuel for them next season. I'm not saying they're going to be a national title contender, but this is an offense that could be very, very dangerous next season. Top 20, top 15.
All right, a lot of love for Jason Beck here in this conversation. So, Brandon, I'll ask you, at 66-year-old, no ageism here for Kyle Whittingham. I know he said he's just stepping down, not retiring when he was leaving Utah. Would still gain some interest from outside schools. Michigan ends up being the one. What is the long-term outlook here for Whittingham at Michigan? And do you think the Wolverines are already thinking beyond what is the reported 5-year contract for him?
You know, the idea was let's get someone that's the long-term fit. Now, we all know that he is 66 years old. He's going to be the 4th oldest head coach in college football next season. He's not the oldest. In fact, if you look down the stretch here, one could argue if he really wanted to stretch this out, he could coach another 7, 8, 9 years, but you're not going to look that far in the future. You're looking at someone here where you're going to hope to get 5, 6 years out of at a very long-standing rate here and be able to win maybe a Big 10 championship or two as he was competing with in the Big 12. You're also looking at someone that wasn't on the downhill swing of his career where the returns on the investment weren't there. He just won 10 games this season. And the big thing that stuck out with me with Kyle Whittingham a year ago about this time, he realized that the offense wasn't quite working there. So he went out and got Jason Beck out of New Mexico. He loved the offense they were running, and they completely changed what they're doing offensively. They love to be very physical up front. That's always what he's going to be, which, again, fits very well there at Michigan. But he wanted someone to be creative and to do some different things. And as he told me back in July, he said, Brandon, we're going to run an offense that looks more like what Urban Meyer ran at Utah back in the early 2000s than anything you've seen over the last 20 years under me. And sure enough, that offense, while run first, was more wide open, more explosive, more exciting. And that's something, again, I think that it just shows Kyle Whittingham is not just sitting there resting on his laurels of this is how it's always been, how I've always run things. He is willing to open the door and open his mind going forward. And so I think he's in a very good spot here in the position. Yes, he might not be there 10 years, but what coach in college football is anywhere longer than 5 years anyway? The common shelf life right now for a head coach in college football is 4 years. In 4 years, you'll be 70 years old.